Hey guys, double wide 6, and a lot of you were requesting I make a video on the disc sander that I built. So this is a look at it. First of all, we'll start out and tell you what I based it on. I designed it myself. I found this picture on the internet, and I think this picture was somewhere in Google SketchUp. And I'm assuming that this one doesn't tilt because I tried to design mine like that, and you actually need trunnions to make it tilt. You can't just have a hole. So maybe this one's not designed to tilt. And my design's kind of based on this, but as you can see, it's a little bit different. I kind of made it to fit my needs, and you can kind of get a look at what it looks like. Like the one in the picture, I made the whole thing portable so that I can take it with me if I need to for anything. So I have it mounted on just a stand like this, and we'll show you how this thing runs and works. Alright guys, we'll turn it on, do a little sanding. And you can see it really works well, takes it down pretty quick, doesn't burn the wood. I've been using it more for metal than wood actually. So I wanted to design mine so that the table will tilt. I got these blocks on each side which mark it in at 90 degrees. And then you just loosen up the handles a little bit and tilt the thing. Oop, I'm hitting a block over here. There we go. And you can slide it up to where you want it to be. I also put some set screws here that I can back out in case I need to shift it at all, to back this edge up, you know, in case the thing's bumping. You can hear right there it's bumping a little bit. Okay guys, we took apart the thing a little bit so you can see it. So it's a 12-inch disc sander, as I said, and this top piece is actually made up of sectioned wood. What I did when I made it is I cut a long strip of wood, maybe like 20 inches long, on a table saw at, I think it was something between like a 3 and 7 degree angle, and then I laid out this disc and just kind of mocked it up together. And then when I had the right angle figured out, what I did is I glued it up, and I put plywood on the back, which is kind of hard to see. So I had this curve cut, and then I glued these blocks together, and you can see I shot in with my nail gun all the way around. And then once I had it glued, they were 3/4 inch thick blocks. They might have even been 1 inch. And then I drew an arc on there using this disc as the inner arc, and I added a 1/4 inch to it. And then this is only now about 5/8 of an inch thick. And for extra strength, I took a piece of plywood and added it onto the front here, and that gives it a lot of strength. And it looks like, yeah, I routed the back of this thing too to round it over. So that's how I did that. Underneath I did the same thing. And when I put these pieces together, I used screws to put everything together, and that way if something wasn't working I could take it apart. So I didn't glue anything, and in fact I had a handle break over here that and I had to take it apart to fix it because the bolt that the handle screwed in stripped out. So that's kind of a little bit of a look of the inside. The motor that I used for it was a 1/3 horsepower, and it's 1725 RPM, and that seems to be a real good speed. I had the motor on hand, so that's why I used it, and it's actually you know, like I said, a really good motor to use for this project. This front piece connects down here to the bottom, you can see that there's screws, and you'll notice that it's angled 45 degrees because when I made this thing I wanted the table to be able to tilt. So that's just 3/4 inch plywood, 45 degrees. This block is actually separate, and it has a back to it, so I can't slide it out right now because I built this little stand for it. But I put a back on it so that it would keep the dust out of the motor. And I also cut a dust port back in here, and that can hook up to a shop vac, but I haven't hooked it up yet. Here's a side view of the thing. So this top piece is just screwed in with 3 screws here, okay? And you can kind of see how, like I said, I'm trying to keep the dust off the motor. And then I just made this little bracket for the switch, kind of like the switch right up top. You know, maybe I'd put the switch a little bit higher just so I don't bump my hands when I go to turn it on, but I haven't done that yet. And I just built, you know, like I said, a little stand with some blocks. So, you know, those of you that were asking about how I made this thing, I didn't make a video when I did it because I didn't quite know what I was doing, and I did spend a fair amount of time figuring out what to do. So, you know, hopefully this just helps a little bit. But overall, this thing works great, and I like the design. I think it's very well designed. Pat on the back. Here's a look at one of the handles. You can see it's kind of rough cut. I think I just traced a handle from a file and added this extra ridge. I cut it out on my homemade bandsaw, drilled it out, put a 3/8 inch threaded rod in there. So that was pretty simple, and it's epoxied in place. And then this actually goes through into the side here, and in here I drilled out a hole and put in a T-nut that this actually screws into on both sides. I know a lot of you guys are going to ask, how did I make the disc? Well, what I did is my motor already had a pulley on it. It was a 2-part threaded pulley, and I took half of it off, which looked just like this. This is the other half, and I laid it out on my drill press, and I set it up in my drill press vise, punched it, and drilled 4 holes. And this piece threaded onto the motor, and then the 4 holes were bolted onto, I used melamine 3/4 inch so that the disc can actually peel off. That's even a little loose there. So I ended up countersinking and using 4 flat-headed bolts, pretty good size, that hold that on. So that disc is about right here. And when I put it on, even though I cut it perfectly round on my wooden bandsaw, I used a template to spin it and cut it perfect, it wasn't balanced properly. So I took the motor and I mounted it on a workbench, and I mounted a board next to it, and I used a chisel and turned the thing, this disc, so that it was perfectly round and true and balanced with the motor. I didn't have to drill any holes to actually balance this disc in the back for weight, because the melamine board is really well balanced. If I used a hardwood like oak or something, it would probably need to be balanced, but this is like manufactured product. Also, I think I said this, the melamine peels easily, and that's why I used it, so I can change up the discs. I use those self-adhesive discs, and I'll put a link to those in the description, and also the rubber blocks that I use to clean it. You can see how clean it is even though I use it with wood. So here's a look at the trunnions I made. I just drilled 2 3/8 inch holes, or maybe a little bigger, and then I cut this out with a jigsaw, routed it, rounded it over, and then I screwed this on here. I didn't even glue it. fact, this one, I just had the chisel part, and I made the entire handle. I think I cut it on my bandsaw and just sanded it on this disc. And you can see it does a nice job sharpening. Alright guys, I'm Double Wide 6. Sorry I didn't make a video of me building this thing, but it would have taken forever because I changed the design about 10 times while I was making it to get it to work right. But anyhow, hopefully this kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of what it looks like and how it's built. And I'm going to put a link down in the description where you can get some of the sanding discs that I use. I mainly use 80 grit and 60 grit. The 60 is a little bit rougher, but generally that's pretty good for what I do. I have an 80 grit on there right now. So check out the description. If you like the video, you can give me a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it. And any comments you have, you can put down there where the comments are. Thanks for watching.